I think it was a shark. Did you get a look at it?
No, not.
And in the same tiny hole as the little shark, meet Gymnothorax favaginius, the black-blotched moray or giraffe eel.
Yum, yum.
Right.
Different in appearance and much smaller than other morays, but identical in its willingness to be hand-fed.
Yum, yum, yum.
The tidal flat is a part of the reef that's easily accessible to the visitor who doesn't dive or snorkel. At low tide, you can find a surprising variety of marine life, but when the water comes back, so do the fish, and the reef flat takes on a different character. The most intense environments of them all for supporting life are the parts of the reef which remain submerged no matter what the tide. Isolating a single square metre on a coral head gives an idea of the sheer number of plants and animals that can live in one spot. What we have is a mass of polyps, sponges, algae, worms, a long list of creatures hidden in and around the coral, a total that can run into thousands of different animals. And on top of that, there are the creatures that swam away because we arrived. The secret of such an intensely populated piece of the ocean is specialisation. There's a marine creature adapted to every environment in the sea. There's no such thing as empty space. Even if you can't see it, something lives wherever you look. Many of the creatures have made some astonishing adaptations to stake a claim to ownership of a part of their square metre. The anemone fish, to my mind, one of the true characters of the fish world, a creature living within a creature. The swaying tentacles belong to anemones, a creature related to jellyfish. It waves around in the currents with its stinging tentacles, causing instant death to any small creature that strays too close. The beautifully decorated fish, and there are several species, are immune to the stings. They coat themselves with a layer of mucus from the anemone that fools the stingers into believing that they're not there. The anemone fish comes out of hiding to feed on smaller creatures, and at the first sign of trouble, darts back to his stinging fortress. The anemone doesn't know it, but as well as a resident, it's also gained an aggressive bodyguard. Aggression means survival. Many fish can't afford to share their feeding patch, especially with another fish of the same species. A mirror placed in a piece of coral shows who owns the territory. A yellow damsel spots the reflection and tries to warn off the intruder. Of course, there's a little confusion when he tries to sneak up for an attack from the rear. And in some cases, the mirror wins. A sandweaver retreats from his own image. The barrier reef has more than 1,500 species of fish, and each of them has a place in a huge interlocking system of mutual survival. At times, the system seems to go completely out of balance, and a small area of reef will be virtually overrun by swarms of a single species. But the numbers never remain stable. One year there's a plague, and the next year they're gone, replaced by a different set of fish. The reasons for these huge variations in numbers are among a very long list of things that scientists don't understand about the most concentrated colony of life on the planet. Compared with the surrounding reefs, life on the square metre ashore is spread more thinly. But what has become established in such remote cays has been a marvel to naturalists for a long time. The birds are the most conspicuous of the animals that live on cays. There are literally millions of them in the Capricorn bunker group. And out of sight, below the ground, there's more life in other nests, just waiting for the right moment to emerge. We were lucky enough to witness one of the rarities of the barrier reef, daylight hatchings of baby turtles. Normally, this only happens after darkness when the temperature is just right.
They're a magnificent little creature. They usually dig up near the surface and then wait before they come out, and then they dig their way out and gallop off down the beach when it's dark. So I guess the guy that blew the whistle, blew it a little early.
What are their chances once they hit the surface? I mean, for a start, they've got a long way to go to make the water.
Yes, but at night time usually there's no problems. There are ghost crabs around and sometimes seagulls will feed at night. And it's a little disconcerting to sit around and watch animals taking them. But here today, I mean, for instance, well, we've got the situation over there now where that one gull is picking on one. It's something you let nature take its course. We shouldn't really interfere.
What about a percentage of survivors?
The general statistic used is about 1% survival. That's to adulthood. But it's a little bit of a bias. I mean, we really don't know how many are out there in the ocean. And also, for instance, a lot of the turtles that breed on the Great Barrier Reef serve as food for the Indonesians. So we don't know what the attrition rate is through human interference.
You going to liberate that last one?
I think that's probably a wise idea. Why don't you have the pleasure?
I just hope he goes in the right direction.
Good luck, little fella.
These little islands of sand and broken pieces of reef have a life of their own. They don't even stand still in the ocean. A coral island can change position, it expands, it shrinks, and it changes constantly. The cays of the barrier reef are just as alive as the coral and the tiny creatures that created them.
A perfect example of how a cay can move around is on North Reef. Normally it would be difficult to measure any movement, but this cay has had a lighthouse on it for almost 100 years. A photograph taken around 20 years ago clearly shows the lighthouse base hanging over the water with a cay behind it. Even though it's still about the same size today, the island has moved around 40 or 50 metres. The sand is more than 4 metres high over what used to be part of the reef flat. New plants have become established and the lighthouse looks as if it was always meant to be in this position. It's a process that goes on even when the cay has reached maturity, when it's thousands of years old and has well-established forests. As a marine biologist, Len Zell believes we should take more notice of what nature shows us. If we don't, we can be rather embarrassed by the results.
Most cays, if you can look at them from the air, have got a little sand tail that wags according to the weather. It's coming, the weather's from this way, the tail is that way. If it comes from that way, the tail goes this way. If you put buildings that are near that tail, what can happen is it can accelerate erosion away from that building, and then the building is then threatened with falling into the ocean. So you have these crazy situations where man tries to beat nature with rock walls and concrete walls. Very expensive process. Probably would have been cheaper to pick up the building and shift it inland 20 metres and then not worry about it. Man is very slow to take messages from the ocean. I mean, we're discovering all these things, and it's great with hindsight 20/20 vision to look back and say we shouldn't have built buildings there. But now I think we've got to learn that we've got to take some messages from the ocean. And we've got a very good example happening here right at the moment. I think we should get back to the boat before we have to swim back.
The cays will always be at the mercy of the elements. At any stage in their early development, the waves can steal back the sand and spread it over the reef. Hundreds of years of nature's building can disappear in a stormy afternoon. As for human interference, that can speed up the destructive process, and some of the damage can't even be seen from the surface. Anchor chains can tear up and obliterate coral heads in the space of a few minutes. Although the numbers of boats aren't large, the damage mounts up, especially in popular spots where each anchor causes new damage.
As if I was going to shake hands.
The number of visitors to the islands with resorts shows very clearly just one economic reason why the coral cays are important. The Great Barrier Reef is at the heart of Australia's tourism industry, and the proportion of international visitors is increasing daily.
This particular tree.
A group of American students taking part of their university course at the Heron Island Research Station. In many ways, they sum up what makes the reef so attractive to the rest of the world.
I come from the Midwest. There are no reefs there. There's not even any ocean there. And this is a wonderful change from cornfields and flat land. Yeah.
And snow.
And snow, yeah, lots of snow.
It's like you'd think you'd seen the most beautiful fish you'd ever seen in your life. You turn around and there's another one. It's just
This is a really great place to see a really self-contained environment and just see it really is wonderful. I don't think you could imagine it without being here.
Since this is so unique to the whole world, it's a real treasure, and I think that people have to come see it, and it has to always be here. I think it's because it's the only one. It really is very important.
Beautiful, complex, and in some ways fragile. These coral cays of the Great Barrier Reef display a remarkable resilience in the face of some of the most powerful forces of nature. But whether they continue to survive so well may depend on how much we interfere with these living islands built from the ocean by living creatures.
And it's certainly an amazing show. Inside the Reef will continue in our world next Sunday night at 6:30. But now don't go away. 60 Minutes will keep you entertained next on 9. And at 8:30, share the incredible true story of the man they call the King of the Olympics. He bargained with Hitler and kept the Olympic ideal alive for over 50 years. His passion for sport surpassed only by his love of women. King of the Olympics. Meet him tonight at 8:30.